talked to my dad the other day, and he tells me this story that I just have to share with you guys.
Yeah.
He said he was working in a shop, and they lived down in Arkansas. And he said he kept hearing this noise, and he couldn't figure out what it was. It was like a voice. And he walked over towards the tool bench, and he could hear it. It's going, "Help me, help me." And he said it just kept going on and on and on. And I'm thinking, well, ghost or something. And he said he kept following it, and he pinpointed it to a coffee can that was turned upside down.
What?
And he puts his ear up next to it, and it's going, "Help me." So he lifts the coffee can up, and he said a bee flew out from underneath of it. And I'm like, "So are you trying to tell me the bee's saying help me?" And he just goes, "All I'm saying is the bees don't bother me anymore."
Holy shit.
And all I'm saying is Mom needs to get Dad one of those medication daily planners, because I'm pretty sure he's taking way too much at this point.
Oh man, that's some strong honey.
Yeah.
Strong honey that's happening inside.
That's my kind of honey right there. You know what I'm saying?
Help me.
Help me. Yeah, it's funny. It's
Oh
funny.
my
Bees are a
gosh.
miracle, man.
Yeah.
I watched a documentary once about have you ever seen the one about all the million bees that went missing all of a sudden
No.
and they just vanished? There's a great documentary on bees and how we need bees to survive as a society. We need bees for the farms, for pollinating, for a lot of reasons, right?
Yeah.
And there was this thing that was happening where all these bees, millions of them, would just disappear out of all these these bee farms and stuff. And the farmers didn't know what was happening. Things were dying off and stuff like that. They'd find them, I don't know where, just way out somewhere else, just all dead. Some would just vanish. They don't even know where they went. Like some weird magnetic pull where they were just getting attracted to this happening, and then all of a sudden they would disappear. So
Dude,
bees
that's so
are a
weird.
miracle, I find, in this world. It's interesting. You need them.
Now, how do they, isn't it something with the queen bee and like how they fly? I can't think of what that was. Is something about the pheromones or something, the queen bee, and that's how they always find their way back. And
Damn.
I could be just totally making that up. I don't know.
That's how
Sounds
we
good.
all find our way back home.
Right. Just follow the pheromones, right?
Yeah.
That's what you got to do. Yeah, see?
Aw.
See? Just follow them pheromones, boys.
All the way back. Yeah, no, it's interesting. You know, when we get into stuff like that, I think one of the most interesting people that I find that I've met on my journey is John Tenney. John Tenney, he's an incredible mind, but he's also interesting to be around. He's hilarious. And I've had some really great times with this guy on different filmings for like Ghost Stalkers, and had on the Nick Ruff tours and events and lectures and all sorts of different cool things that we cross paths on, Michigan Paracon, whatnot. And I don't know, it's just weird when we get into different topics. You could talk to him about anything, and there's something weird that comes out of him at the ending. And it makes sense. He takes something, right? And he breaks it down to the point where you actually understand, even though it's so like weirdly like constructed, and he's breaking it down
That's amazing.
to where you actually understand it. That's what I find weird.
That'll be beneficial for me. It'll be good. It'll be good.
I have a lot of my favorite John Tenney moments throughout the many, many years I've known him. But I think one of my favorites when we were in Ohio, Nick. And we're at a hotel. I wake up in the morning. I go outside just to get some fresh air. And I see this huge crowd of senior citizens. And there's like a bus, like a tour bus. They're obviously on some senior bus tour. And I'm like, what are they doing over there? So I walk over and I start making my way through the crowd. And in the middle of them is John Tenney sitting in the middle of the parking lot with a coffee and a cigarette.
Yeah.
And he's going, so really, when you break it down, all of us are at the very least sixth cousins. So we're all. And all the seniors are like, yeah, that's very true. And the bus driver honks. He's like, we got to go.
We got to
And
get out
the
of here.
seniors didn't even want to go. And I'm like, of course, it's John Tenney up at
Wow.
like 5 a.m. talking to about 100 seniors over weird stuff.
Oh yeah.
That sounds exactly like Tenney.
I love
He's always
it.
holding court somewhere. You know what I mean? He's always holding court.
Yeah, he just randomly comes out of the darkness, and then there he is. He's the light in our
pops out.
darkness.
He's like, hey guys, hey, I just thought I'd stop by.
So good.
He totally is. I'm waiting for that to happen right now. Where he
Yeah.
just
Oh, hey, guys.
Yeah.
come in here.
I'm going to go on record here and say that I've officially called him 4 times now. So
Amazing.
we still have nothing yet.
Amazing. Well, he's kind of like Sasquatch in a way.
He's
Like,
very elusive.
you know what I mean? He's very elusive, and then he'll just pop up all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Yep. That's one topic I want to talk to him about because he has an interesting conversation. I heard him once speak about Bigfoot. I have a really cool question I want to ask him. I want to ask him if he thinks Bigfoot is actually a topa. That's what I'm curious about. So it will be interesting to hear his thoughts on that. So many questions, but I think, here we are. 4 guys with mysterious brains that are just trying to figure it out. And Tenney's just going to come walking in here and solve all of that for us. He's going to break it down and be like, this is what it is. This is how it is, guys.
I will
Like,
personally pay any one of us for $20 to whoever can stump Tenney tonight. I don't think it can be done.
Yeah.
That's a tough
maybe.
one.
That is a tough one.
That's a tough one.
But $20 is $20.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we'll see. Which question would it be, though? We'll stump him.
Yeah.
See, that's a tough one too.
We've already lost.
Yeah, we're already screwed now. Yeah.
We're already screwed. Yeah.
Maybe we look up really quick on Google, some random word that is out of the dictionary in some Latin form. See if he
Right.
finds it. Or maybe a little city. Oh, maybe what's the smallest city in America?
Oh, there you go.
I'm going to Google this real quick.
Yeah.
I
okay,
think
nice.
I know what it is. Because I read an article about it the other day. It's the only reason I know. But I could be wrong. It could be something
love it.
else.
I love
I'd
it.
be curious. I'd be
Buford,
curious to know.
Wyoming.
Is it Wyoming?
Population 1.
Damn.
Wow.
Are they the mailman, mayor,
Everything.
everything?
The whole
60-year-old
nine.
Don Salmons is alone in that town.
Dang,
Don
man.
Salmons. That's amazing. That's a great name, Salmons.
Yeah, let's get him on the show.
Yeah. So Don,
Let's get
Don,
Don Salmons.
Mr. Salmons, how's it going there tonight in your city? Quaint, just you and
Yeah.
You?
Nice and quick.
just you and you. You don't
Yeah.
say.
It's like quiet,
You
just the
don't
way
say.
I like it.
Yeah,
I would like to get Don Salmons on.
Any luck on Tenney?
Nothing yet, guys.
Not yet.
Nothing
Not
yet.
yet.
Wow. Well, maybe if I tell a Tenney story, one of my Nick, I gotta say you had the vision to put him and I together in Ghost Stalkers, and I gotta say that John Tenney is probably one of the most influential people as far as my paranormal journeys go. I mean, he's up there as far as like what who has most influenced me and opened me up to so many things. And we had just an amazing time shooting the show, and now I can't imagine not ever knowing the guy. You know what I mean? I feel like whoever gets to meet John Tenney, it's just lucky because he's just a fascinating individual. I can't even call him human. I think he's beyond human. I think he's something else.
It's awesome.
I agree there with you. Yeah, I mean, when I first got to know Tenney, it was interesting talking about all sorts of different stories when I was aligning what became Ghost Stalkers. It was actually a different name that I wanted it to be called. and it turned out it was actually originally called Death Walkers, which I loved.
Yeah.
And then it turned into Ghost Stalkers network decision, but it's all good, and the cool thing is Chad and John coming together. It was an interesting combination from different perspectives. Tenney with a couple of decades of investigating.
At least 3.
At least
Add,
3
yeah,
decades.
add another decade in there. He's not around. Let's just add another decade.
and then we got Chad coming in, just
Less than a decade.
going wild in the locations. And I love seeing Chad's perspective too. Dude, the fear that you had going in these locations was so genuine.
So amazing.
But it was so interesting too because I felt like you grew into your own shoes. Like now, dude, like you're investigating all the time, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it taught me so much about fear. It taught me so much about what I'm capable of doing. And these weren't these were places, these were no walk in the park places. These were like tear your guts out, locations.
Yeah.
And, we had so many deep conversations on top of many laughs that were needed, but so many deep conversations about what the fuck was going on, and Tenney coming in, when I first met him, he was like, nothing's going to bother me. And then by the end of the shoot, like he had his experiences, and to see him sort of unravel as well as me unravel, but in different ways, but it was all towards growth. It was just one of the most profound experiences, in my life, and definitely has changed me forever.
So weird.
This is going to be us after a year of doing this. Just
Yeah. No, what it'll be is fucking
Just
Josh.
like,
That's
we're all
what it'll
texting.
be.
We're like, oh, what, Johnny? Johnny, hold on a second.
none of us can even stand to talk to each other anymore. We're just like,
Just like, fuck it.
That's so true. All the excitement in the beginning.
He's like, oh yeah, here I am, guys. Yep, there you are.
Oh my God, did you guys hear about G Crew? They broke up.
The G Crew broke up.
G Crew is now Easy Crew. It's just me alone.
Yeah. Dude,
It's just me alone.
did you see that Flava Flav just got booted?
Yeah.
I did, because he didn't agree with one of the politicians
Is
that
that what it
everybody
was?
else agreed.
Is that what it
Yeah,
was?
that's why he got booted, because everyone was like, "Oh,
man.
we're backing so and so politician," and
he didn't want
Flavor
that.
Flav didn't agree with it, so
Yeah.
they're like, "Well, you're out."
Damn, man. Like, how do you kick out Flava Flav? It's
Dude,
so
but
crazy.
that's the society we're living in
Dude.
today. If somebody doesn't agree with one person in the group or the hierarchy or whatever the company is or whatever it is,
For
man,
real.
it's like that person's gone, you know?
For real.
It's crazy. It's crazy. I don't know how you out someone like that.
Well, you're about to find out, gentlemen. Welcome to L Crew.
All of a sudden my screen just goes black.
Yeah, there it is.
Just shoot through.
Bam.
Just shoot through.
Shit.
Oh, that would be hilarious if everything just went out.
Welcome to
And-
El
but
Gato.
that's like 2 years from now when we have money and we can prank each other.
Yeah.
Dude, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we completely oust Nick
Yes.
for an episode,
Oh my
You
gosh.
should.
and we kidnap him. Have somebody
I
kidnap
would
him.
love that. I would love that. I'm walking out of my house one morning, and then you just roll up in the van like old school. Just
Yeah.
hood me. And be
Yeah.
like, he'll be back by dinner. And then just throw me. In
We're
the
just
back.
kidding,
Give him the
sweetheart.
old
We'll have him
G
back
Crew
by dinner.
surprise.
Man, I miss Blue. One of my favorite movies is Old School.
Yes.
I love that film.
I
Like my
love
favorite movie.
you.
Josh,
tell
we
me.
gotta throw like a party like in Old School at Malvern Manor.
I'm fine with this.
Invite Snoop Dogg.
He'll be like, Snoop, why is there no ice in my cup? Go fill it up again now.
Oh man,
Snoop, you're
Chad,
my
are you
boy.
frozen?
I think he's
Either
just
Chad
thinking
is
really
frozen
hard.
right now, or he's like staring off
He's
into
just-
the abyss.
He's just thinking really hard.
That's like method acting right now. He's just staring.
oh,
there he is.
There he is, hey,
Here,
buddy.
here I am.
Dude, you stopped. We were talking, but it looked like you were listening,
You were just
but you were
off.
so like cold. Like your face was dead cold. I'm like, either that's some method acting or he's staring off in the abyss. Oh, I miss you guys. So we were just talking about the craziness that went down on Ghost Stalkers and how weird it got. Not during the investigations, but actually during the car rides. And right before you came in, I was telling the story. I kind of set it up, but you should continue this story, John, about how I just started drifting away into sleep. And then I just kind of tennis matched it to Justin because I couldn't listen to David tell the story anymore. So then it just goes on for, how long was it? He's telling us all sorts of stuff.
It was at least 4 hours.
I nailed it. 4 hours. It was 4 hours.
Oh,
It was
And
at least 4 hours, and David started off talking normally weird about ancient astronauts and stuff like that. But then at some point, he like maybe he saw that we were drifting and maybe we weren't paying attention. And so he was checking out like how far he could push it. And so at some point it became like he realized that Ancient Aliens was real because he was the reincarnation of an Anunnaki high priest from Sumeria.
Holy shit.
And then he started talking about like the rocks that he would find in the river by his house that had Sumerian carvings on them. And that's why he carries knives with him to protect him from the ancient evil Anunnaki. And that went on for 4 fucking hours.
And there was a tone to his voice because we were kind of like all half asleep, right? It was just kind of this like, it was this tone that he had going the whole time, you know?
I was consciously hearing it in my back of my brain.
Yeah.
This is I'll try and do my David imitation. And then I realized I was an Anunnaki high priest in Sumeria 6,000 years ago. The swords were calling to me. I could feel them pulsing through the ages. Just insane.
Oh man.
And the best part was we're all sleeping. We're drifted away.
But
and
listening,
consciously we're hearing this.
Listening,
consciously, yeah, it's there. It's implanted in my brain. I will never forget it. He did something to my brain. Altered it.
And then the capper of that story is I actually remember this. He's actually at a point in the story where he was talking about how he had collected like 5 Sumerian crystals, and his girlfriend at the time he found out was a reincarnation of an Egyptian high priest. And we pull up in front of the hotel and the door slides open and he looks at the hotel and he goes, "Oh man, this is fucking weird." And I looked at him and I was like, "This is fucking weird. You just talked to us for 4 hours about how you're an Anunnaki high priest."
Yeah, the funniest part, I remember hearing that. I remember Tenney's reaction. I rolled out of the van, literally rolled out of the van onto the grass, fell down, and I just laid there in the darkness of this woods. I don't even know where the heck we were. Oh,
I couldn't stop laughing. It was such it was such a release because we were tired. We had been traveling so much, and it was this sort of this tone that kept going and going, and these stories, and then literally pulling up to this location or the hotel, and he was like, "Oh, what kind of fucked up place is this?" And then John said what he said, and that was it. We all lost it. I don't think it was a very therapeutic laugh. I'll tell you that.
Oh, it was epic. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had. I needed that laugh after that car ride. It was just weird, and that was like our welcome. That was like, this is the beginning of a weird investigation to come. Whispers Estates.
Aside from that investigation, so David's weird story kicked it off, and then the next day, I think it was the next day, Chad and I went on a walk through the woods, and I lost my sunglasses. And we walked around for maybe another like quarter of a mile, and my sunglasses were literally hanging on a tree in front of us.
Oh, weird.
Like the forest gave my glasses back to me. It was the craziest. There's a picture of me like going, "Huh?" Because we walked down this path and there's just a single solitary, my sunglasses hanging on a tree branch right in front of us. And there was no one else in this forest.
Yeah, no one was around, and we kept talking about all of the things that were kind of falling into our life, into the places, and just kind of take a look at this moment, take a look at that moment, and then John lost his glasses, and we kept going. We kept taking photos and selfies and ussies, and then we come back, and literally John's glasses are hanging on the trail, just waiting for us, just smiling at us.
Weird.
And then I think it was later that night, I told the kid at the hotel that he should kill himself.
Yeah, you did. I was there. I walked in on that one. That was crazy because he said he didn't believe in ghosts. He didn't believe in anything. He's just, that was it. And you're like, oh, well.
We were all talking about what we do. And he comes out from behind the counter like a 19-year-old kid, from Indiana. And he sits down and he's like, "Well, I don't believe in any of this. When you're dead, you're dead." And I got super serious. I think I had a couple whiskeys in me.
But but it was also, I think we had been there, I think a night or two, because I had gone in, like things had happened. This just wasn't like, I'm going to tell this guy. It was like things had happened to us. And then we were having this really in-depth, heavy conversation. And he comes wheeling in like, hey guys, yeah, fuck life, whatever. And John was like, well, if that's what you think, then go ahead right now. Go ahead.
I was like, oh, if you don't believe anything, if you die and once you're dead, then all of this is just pointless. So you should just go in the back office now and off yourself. Do it now. Like, what are you waiting for? If all this is pointless and there's no such thing as ghosts and there's no such thing as the afterlife, fuck it, go kill yourself. And the air got a little heavy in that moment.
Yeah, I walked in on that moment, and as I'm walking in, I'm hearing John say that. I stood there for a second, and I said, huh, interesting. And I turned around and walked out. I'm like, I probably shouldn't be here right now.
But imagine just a little bit more like Dragnet, though. Like John was definitely in lower like tone. You know what I mean? The drinks, the cigarette. The spotlight was turned on the kid. It was a fantastic moment.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
That was epic. That was a weird location. I'll never forget some of the stuff that happened at that location. We were in the RV, just the three of us, right? And we heard this slamming sound on the RV. Remember that? And we ran outside, nothing there. That's how it kicked off. And then Chad's about throwing up. We're like, Chad, it's your turn. You're gagging. You're throwing up.
I threw up. I threw up. Because I knew, I had got punched in the chest earlier that day when Gwen was talking about all of the previous owners, and I got punched in the chest. And then that's when it really started to work on me. And then realizing I had to go in that night, and I was terrified, and I threw up, and then in the camper, and I came out, and John, what's not in the edit, sat and talked to me for about an hour. And really built up my confidence and really laid it out for me. Like, look, man, we are inevitably stronger than they are, and it's gonna be okay. Because I was fearing my life, and then I went in and it changed my life. That was a very profound moment. But yeah, and John, before you got here, I was just saying how you are one of the most influential people in my life. Especially with the paranormal, and you. Just meeting you and being able to go out there with you and have those experiences really changed me, and I hold that to a high regard. So, it's really fun to have John Tenney on.
You had me at hello.
Yeah, we did. And thanks. Go ahead.
I think that's a thing though. I tell people all the time when they watch Ghost Stalkers and they watch our interactions. I don't think people realize how much I learn from you, because when you do this for a long time, you lose that spark of doing something. It becomes a job, like going into weird haunted places. That weird fucked up stuff is going to happen to you. You've prepared yourself mentally for it, and you put up kind of like psychic blocks. And I've done this for so long, where being able to see you be raw and open and honest about your emotions, that helps me. I don't think people understand in this field how much we influence each other, all of us. Whether it's watching someone go through the motions and the steps that we took when we first started, or giving us a new idea to think about, a new turn of phrase, seeing somebody do something incorrectly that influences you to not do it that way. Like we are all in this together. And, the people that I dislike in this field or don't get along with, I've learned a lot from them too. I've learned how to not be like them.
Me too. And that's why I'm here. I absolutely love the day that we had our first conversation, John, and we were talking on the phone, I think, when you were we were talking about meeting at Penhurst. Remember that?
Yep.
And it was just so cool to finally talk to somebody who was thinking outside the box. For me personally, in my life, and just the way our paths crossed, that moment for me was really special, because I took away from that, I'm learning something new. I was learning something new from you, and just new information, new ideas, new thoughts, learn to think outside the box, not be redundant. And that's what I was looking for so many years doing Ghost Adventures. It became redundant to me towards the ending, before I departed from that episodic series. And I just was ready for some change. I just wanted to pursue something that I felt passionate about. So it was really cool to talk to you, and just going to Penhurst, being with you and Chad. One of the best moments was you two sitting in the RV having a conversation. just about death, our experiences, life, the in-between, your backgrounds, and just hearing something that was like genuinely from the heart, you know, like you felt that passion. That was so genuine. And if anyone ever sees the reel that we shot, which was originally, before you came on, we were saying it was Death Walkers. It was never Ghost Stalkers. It was Death Walkers, which I still love that title. And that's, I felt, was one of the coolest reels we put together to present. That eventually got picked up into the series that turned into Ghost Stalkers. But I don't know, it's always special to me, you know, because of what it was when it started. I feel like some of that stuff gets lost sometimes in translation with the networks or corporate people or people that want to have all their ideas and throw them in and try to cut stuff down or whatever. But I felt like it was so raw. You know, we maintained it pretty well and kept it at heart. We really fought hard for that, which was cool.
But yeah, it's really interesting to me to see how people are beginning to understand. I mean, it's going to take a while for the old school kind of network corporate people to understand this, but like we have an entire society now that loves listening to podcasts, listening to discussions, watching documentaries that are discussion heavy. They're realizing that like people don't need jump cuts and scares all the time, that they want to hear people talking deeply and honestly about how they feel about who we are, what we are, how we exist in reality, what comes after we die, that we all share these experiences and none of us know. And it's very uncommon to not have those conversations. Like when you are sitting with your friends, you will inevitably get to these conversations that people want to have, that people want to listen to. And networks still don't understand that. They don't want to show people talking. They think it's boring. They think that they have to scare them. But the reality is, like you guys know, podcasts, documentaries, people love listening to other people talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's what I love about this, because can't cut us, right? It's gonna be in. This is what it is. It is what it is. So I love that about what all of us offer. And I think it's really cool when you bring people together from different backgrounds, ideas, theories, whatever it is. It's a conversation and communication. I think that's the key of being a human being, is learning and evolving. I feel like when we start, you know, kind of tarnishing that and cutting back, and you're just pushing these like you're saying, John, these jump cuts or these bump outs to commercials or whatnot, it's almost like you're saying this is what happens every time an investigation happens. This is it. But in fact, it is absolutely not what happens. You could be sitting around for hours watching paint dry on the wall, or just sitting there talking to yourself in dark for hours. You never know, man. It's a needle in the haystack.
Well, and like for me, like the reason I think Hauser and I get along so well is because, like, I met Hauser again at a point where I had become really stoic. I had become really like, there's a huge part of me that's a goofball. And I had forgotten that part. And like Johnny was so just honestly Johnny, and weird and funny and willing to run around and willing to like just say whatever crazy thing was in his head. I was like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. That's like, I can be goofy. I've always been really kind of upset that when I work in television, I get pigeonholed as this like cigarette smoking, like dour man, when anybody that knows me is like, you are a fucking goofball. And I'm like, yeah, for sure. But they don't want to show that on TV either. They don't want to show people actually having fun sometimes doing this stuff.
And what I think,
no laughing.
What I think's important to segue into now is that, and you probably knew this, guys, but Tenney did stand-up comedy for a while.
Yeah.
And when he told me this, I was waiting. I was like, I can totally see that. Absolutely.
That would be insane.
Yeah, when people watch my lectures, they're like, oh, you're really funny. And I'm like, yeah, like this shit that we're talking about is ridiculous. We're talking about monsters and ghosts and UFOs. It's inherently silly. For someone, it's always bothered me when someone stands up in front of with a podium and like their PowerPoint presentation, and they're like, we are now going to discuss ghosts. When you guys know, when I do my lectures, I'm like, listen, this is going to get fucked up and I'm just going to talk about some crazy shit. So hold on. Like that's the way it should be.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Speaking of, do you think Bigfoot is a topa? That's what I want to know.
Oh,
What is your
yeah,
idea
yeah.
on that? I've heard you say this once. You were conversing. I overheard you talking about this once. Bigfoot. Do you believe it's a topa or something else?
Well, I think that my Bigfoot argument has always been like, I think that there are as many different types of Bigfoot as there are different many ideas about Bigfoot. So I think that there are some Bigfoot that are tulpas or agregores or thought forms, but I do think that there's a big animal running around out in the forest too. But I do think that maybe there are aliens that look like Bigfoot. And I do think that there may be elemental creatures that look like Bigfoot. And I do think that maybe you can summon Bigfoot doing magical rites. And I do think that Bigfoot might just be like a folklore creature that doesn't exist. I think all of those things are happening simultaneously. And when we try and put it into one category, that's where we really lose the concept of, I talk a lot in my lectures about, when you study a tentacle, you miss the octopus. And I wish that people would look at the creature as a part of the strangeness that we're always in, and not so much, I mean, even to the point of Bigfoot being a ghost. I was doing, I was actually sitting at dinner with Amy Bruni one time, and her little girl Charlotte whispered something to Amy, and Amy said, "Ask Tenney." And Charlotte said, "Why are there no dinosaurs ghosts? Why are there no ghost dinosaurs walking around?" And just off the top of my head, I looked at her and I said, "Well, what do you think the Loch Ness Monster is? Why do you think we can't catch the Loch Ness Monster? It's just the ghost of a plesiosaur." And then I started to think about it, and I was like, well, maybe that's why we can't catch Bigfoot either. Maybe it's the ghost of a Neanderthal or a caveman. Like, if those things, if we're going to allow for one weird thing, we have to allow for all the weird things.
Yeah.
This is why we love Tenney. I mean, this is like the rabbit hole that I love going down. I don't know about you guys, but I'm literally like entranced. So every time I get around John, I'm entranced, and he's got the cigarette going, and I love it right now. I absolutely love it. And if you ever do stand up, John, you have to have the cigarette on stage with you. We have to.
It's problematic now because they don't let you smoke in comedy clubs.
Fucking squares, man. I tell you.
No, you could comedy at a casino.
Okay, yeah.
That would work. That would work. What was the last time you did stand up? What year? Do you
about
know?
a year ago. I did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Out there in Detroit?
Yeah, I found an open mic where they'd give me 6 or 7 minutes, and I went up on stage and bombed horribly.
Really?
It's terrible.
Not with us. We would be there and be rolling.
Yeah.
What was your punch? Give us something that you said that probably nobody has heard. Like, what would be one thing you get up there? You know, what was something that happened? One of your jokes.
No, so what I do is, obviously, I think that best comedy comes from just real personal stories that are ridiculous. And so a lot of the times when I do stand-up, I talk about when I was a school bus driver, because I drove a school bus for a long time. And the most absolutely ridiculous things happen when you drive a school bus. And so one of the stories that I tell about being on the school bus was, I'm the school bus driver. I picked up some junior high kids. I've got a full bus load full of kids. And I'm pretty sure this is actually when my life was supposed to end, because it would have been a perfect ending, like in a movie, right? So I'm driving the school bus. I've got a 12-year-old and a 13-year-old girl sitting behind me. And the 13-year-old girl says to the 12-year-old girl, "Are you still a virgin?" And the 12-year-old girl looks at the 13-year-old and goes, "Yes, because I only let boys put their penis in my butt." And I'm pretty sure at that point in my life, the bus should have crashed into a tree, and then it should have faded to black and rolled credits on my life, because I didn't need to go any fucking further in my life to know that that's what was happening in junior high. That was not junior high when I was in junior high. When I was in junior high, you barely held a girl's hand. We are now at a point where things have changed, my friends.
Oh, absolutely. And it's probably changed even worse now.
Dude, I guarantee
even now,
it.
I mean, with the social media and everything.
That story comes from 12 years ago, so yes.
Oh God, it's
Absolutely,
terrifying, man.
yeah.
My daughter's, oh my God, she's 11 years old. Come on. Fuck.
So this is the
Don't ride the
reaction I
bus.
got. This is the reaction I got from the crowd when I told the story. Everybody was like, "Yikes!"
I wonder how many kids rode the bus the next day. That's what I want to know. Everyone probably drove their kids to school the following day.
Guaranteed.
Nothing is worse than driving. I mean, people ask about like ghosts and being in prisons, and mental homes and stuff like that, until you've driven a school bus in a Detroit winter with 60 junior high school kids on it, that's when you should be afraid. They're throwing snowballs inside of the bus. They're all trying to fight or kiss each other.
Oh my
You're
God.
going 45 miles an hour on slick ice. I mean, that's harrowing.
That's awful.
Ooh.
That's awful.
Lock
That's
me
awful.
Lock me in a haunted prison anytime.
Yeah.
You ever yell at any kids or kick kids off or anything like that when you're driving?
The closest I got was there was one kid running down the school bus, like everybody, I was dropping them off at school, and out of the corner of my eye, I was kind of escorting them off the bus as a bus driver will do when you get to school. And I saw a kid, last kid on the bus, and he was running down the bus full speed. And there are those steps that you have to kind of leap off if you're supposed to walk down them. But he leapt off of them in a flying kind of karate kick at my head. and I ducked, and he rolled over me. And when he stood up, he was in a karate stance, but so was I. And he goes, "Are you going to fight me?" And I said, "Only if you fight me." And he was like, "I'm not going to fight you." And then he ran off and went to class. So that was the closest I got to yelling at a kid. But I would have whipped that kid's ass. I would have whipped that kid's ass.
Oh man, to be a kid and ride your bus, that would have been genius.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. He probably liked you and he was just testing you, I would imagine, you know?
I will tell you, when I started driving a school bus when I was 29, and you don't often get a 29-year-old school bus driver. I still had my full head of hair. I was in the strength of youth at 29 years old. And usually it's old ladies driving school buses or old men driving school buses. The first day I had to pick up my elementary school kids, all of the single mothers looked like they were sending their kids off to the first day of school. I mean, they looked hit. They looked like they would gotten them all dressed and got them all fed. And when the door opened and there was this 29-year-old guy driving a school bus, the second day I picked up their kids, all of those moms looked like they were going to the club that night.
So hot.
Makeup, hair, dresses, ready to go. "Hello, Mr. John," walking kids on the school bus. "How are you today, Mr. John?" Things had changed.
That's amazing.
Did you wear the tie and everything back then when you rode the...
When I drove the school bus, no, it was usually like a Ramones t-shirt and blue jeans
Well,
and
that's
Converse.
nice.
But when did the shirt, when did the tie start? Was it like at a really young, like, did you as a boy ever like dress in ties?
Yeah, for sure. I posted a picture on Twitter once of me. I used to wear ties and trench coats all the time, starting around 16, because I was hanging out with all these punk rock kids, and I was a punk rock kid growing up. And I realized that all of them had mohawks, all of them had leather jackets, all of them had combat boots. And so they all looked the same, even though they were all trying to be different.
Right.
So if you went into a punk rock club and you were like, "Get that kid in the leather jacket," who are you going to get? Everybody's wearing a leather jacket. Get that kid with a mohawk. There's 40 kids with mohawks. But if you said, "Get that guy in a tie and a trench coat," they went straight to me. So by dressing professionally and normally, I was actually dressing the weirdest out of anyone. And even to this day with like ghost hunting, like even on Ghost Stalkers, there was a backlash of people who were like, "How do you hunt ghosts in a tie?" Like people were mad because I wasn't wearing a black t-shirt and jeans.
Well, that reminds me of a story, and we'll go back to Whispers Estate. One of the caretakers, Gwen, I believe what her name was, right? It was very interesting because Gwen, I believe, kind of slept in a cubicle of the house. Like literally, she kind of showed us her area. And Whispers Estate was one of the most craziest places that I've ever been to. It was one of the most profound. But she took a liking to me, but she did not trust, and she because of the tie and the trench coat. And in fact, she told the spirits to give you hell. She did not like you, and I think it was also because of the way you were dressed.
For sure. She for sure put a hex on me or something. It was very strange.
Definitely did. I remember her coming up to me and actually saying that. She goes, I don't like him. I don't understand why. Like you haven't even gotten to know him or anything like that. He's a great guy. And she's like, "No, just the tie and the suit." It's like, I didn't get it. I didn't understand what she was going for. But for some reason, she just didn't like your appearance. Which is like, going back to, we were talking to the Shrek family. It's like, don't judge a book by its cover. You know what I mean? Some reason she just didn't like that.
I also realized in the 90s when I really started lecturing a lot that there was also kind of a subversion thing going on with the tie, which was when you look really crazy, there is, because people do inherently judge books by the cover, because there is a psychological, like, first glance, first notice of a person. When you look slightly crazy, or when you look somewhat ill-prepared and you're about to disseminate information to people, there's a little bit of a holdback they do, because you look slightly slovenly and unprepared. And if you're dressed up, if you have a tie on or something like that, they're like, oh, this person must know what they're talking about. Then you can talk about the craziest shit that you want to, because they're like, oh, this guy must know what he's talking about. He's wearing a tie. And the next thing I'm doing is I'm talking to them about, interdimensional transgalactic Bigfoot and space wizards on Venus. And they're like, yeah, that makes sense. And really part of what they're doing is just looking at my tie and going, oh, he must know what he's talking about.
That's awesome. Speaking of, going back to like ghost and paranormal and all that jazz. So what today? So years ago, a decade ago, John, when you started in this.
3 decades ago.
I know I'm trying to say 1 decade. Chad was saying 3. I'm just saying a decade.
3 decades.
Yeah,
I know,
3
decades. So when you started in this, John, it's obviously evolved into something different. What would you say today? What would you say back then you thought it was, and now today, what do you think a ghost, if we're just saying a ghost, what do you think it's made up of? Is it dark matter? Is it energy? Is it particles? Like, what would your mind kind of go, take us down that rabbit hole again for a ghost?
When I started, I had that idea that I think most people do, that when you die, there's something like you that persists, and it thinks like you and talks like you and acts like you. And it's just, for lack of a better descriptor, it's just a kind of invisible version of you that walks around, and it may be a little confused. And I thought that because that's what I read in books, and that's what was the kind of popular idea at the time. I didn't know that people had thought deeper than that, or had constructed ideas larger than that. It took me time to find those authors that didn't think that thought that, your body is much like a television set, that John, me, is a program that's put into this television set, and that when this television set ends, the program doesn't end. If you are watching The Big Bang Theory and you smash your television, you didn't end The Big Bang Theory. You just broke your television. When your television stops working, all the television shows don't stop. They don't immediately dissolve. So somewhere out there is John. And right now, this receiver is picking it up. And so when this body goes away and that program is still out there in the ether somewhere floating around, I think every now and then you'll pick up parts of the show, like a radio sweeping multiple frequencies. I think that sometimes this is what happens with children who remember past lives. A little kid might talk about remembering something from someone else's life. Well, the little kid hasn't really created his program yet. The program hasn't found his television. And so he's scanning all the frequencies, and he's picking up little blips of all the people who have come and gone before him. And maybe some of those memories sneak into his brain, and he blurts them out. It doesn't mean that he's that person reborn. It means that his radio is picking up that frequency for a second or a minute or a moment. But that's just one aspect of ghosts. Like, for me, I think it is much wider and weirder. But I always said at my lectures, if I become an invisible version of myself, if that's what happens when I die, I'm going to be supremely disappointed, because I've been allowed to exist in a world where I can think of all these insane, weird, wild concepts, and then to die and just be me, but invisible. And, the most I can do is turn a flashlight on or off, or whisper yes in a recorder. Like, I'm going to be really fucking mad about that. Like, I don't want to, if I'm not locked into my body, if I'm not locked into time going forward, if I can go backward and forward in time and anywhere in space in time, then I'm not going to sit in a house and knock on a table if you ask me to knock. I'm going to be sitting in the heart of the sun. I'm going to be going backwards in time and looking at dinosaurs. I'm going to be going to the Andromeda galaxy. And I'm really not like going to turn a flashlight on if I'm there.
But why do you think some people just are there? Why would they stay? I mean, we've been in some really nasty places. Why would they choose to be in somewhere like that? If because I agree, I want to keep going. I want to move on. I want to see I want to fucking see some dinosaurs and shit. I want to hang out with you guys. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't want to be in a goddamn room fucking stuck, but like, why do you think that they are there?
Because I don't know if when we say they are, like, we don't know who they are. Like, there might be creatures that exist in that world that take the form of who we want to communicate with. And, you know, you go into a place and you're like, okay, a little girl died in this place, and everybody's thinking about the little girl that died in that place. And maybe there's an energy in that place that just wants to give you what you want. And so it takes everything out of your brain and everything out of everybody else's brain that's thinking about that little girl, and it gives responses like that little girl. We wouldn't know it's not that little girl. We have trouble discerning who people are when they're sitting across from us at a table and we can see them. We don't know their motivations. We don't know their drives, their passions, and who they really are. And now we're supposed to be able to do that with invisible creatures that we can't see or talk to. Like, it might, I don't think a lot of the time that we're dealing with people who have died in a location. You know, when we say that too, this is another thing that I ask people to think about. When we say that someone died in this location and they stayed in that location, what does that even mean? When we started, when all of us started this conversation 30 minutes ago, the planet was hundreds of thousands of miles away from where it is right now. We're not in the same location. And so it's like, we're not even physically in the same location. So how is a ghost, how is a person's essence keeping up with the planetary spin as the planet goes around the sun, as the sun goes around the galactic center, as the galactic center goes around the cosmos? Like, we're moving at 100 million miles a day just through space, with the Earth spinning at hundreds of thousands of miles an hour. And then if you say a ghost is in a house, it's only in that house. What happens when that house falls down? Because the ghost doesn't really know the house is there, right? We've seen it walk through walls, or it goes through a stairwell that's no longer in existence. And so it's remembering where a house was. So if the house falls down and the ghost was only on the second floor, is there a ghost now 12 feet up in the air walking around that no one's going to ever see because that house isn't there anymore? And then when the planet blows up, is that ghost still going to be in that place where the planet was, where the house was, on the second floor, floating around in space all by itself? Like, that's why it's so ridiculous when we say we've got it figured out. We don't have any of it figured out.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. And then we get into the notion of like time, right? We get into time. What, like, you know, we're born into this world, we have this middle part, and then we die. We almost create time in a sense because we grow older and we have to go to sleep, wake up and whatnot, and go to work, and people start forgetting and they say, oh, it's time, right? I don't have enough time, or time is against me, or whatever time is. But I went into a location recently, and I had a weird experience. I went up on top of the Washoe Club. I've been investigating for a decade, and I've been back there several times. And my past self, back in 2000 and I think it was 2005 or 6, I went there for the first time. And then I went back there a couple of times. And then I was getting my name on the recorder saying Nick Groff. Dead quiet. I get my name, right? Here I am, fast forward years later. I went back there recently in the last couple of months. And I'm up on the top floor in the same spot. I walk into the room by myself, and I see my past self. No joke. I saw my past self walk into the room with the recorder and a camera in my hand. Then I'm like, wait a second, what is happening? I get goosebumps talking about. I'm seeing my past self, right? In my mind, I'm seeing this play out. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, wait, I'm hearing the Nick Groff come on the recorder. And myself in present time says, wait a second, is that me right now saying Nick Groff? And I said it out loud, Nick Groff. Is that what I'm capturing on the recorder? Myself back then is hearing myself in the time that I'm in right now, capturing. It's a weird bend in time. I think we're experiencing that a lot at locations too, is this time slip, parallel universes. I think time has a huge part of it. We can't just say it's a ghost. That's what I'm hearing on the recorder. It's a ghost. That's what's making these cool little gadgets light up. It's a ghost with everything we used to think, right? I think we have to take into thinking outside the box as time. It could be possibly different parallel universes. I don't know. I mean, what's your idea on time right now, John?
I mean, so I tell people all the time, if you look at the old hauntings that were written down, a lot of the ones that we still investigate 110 years ago, this place has been haunted for 120 years. If you look at those hauntings, a lot of times what they see are shapes and shades and shadows walking around in the night. They'll see little weird lights. They'll hear knocks on the tables. They'll hear knocks on the walls. And it isn't lost on me that that's how we investigate now.
Yeah.
Are we investigating? Are they seeing us investigate in the past? Like when I knock on a table now in the present and I go, can someone knock here? And I knock twice on a table. Did someone 110 years ago for the first time hear those two knocks and start thinking this house is haunted? Then they see little lights and we carry around buzzers and flashers and little lights and we spray LED lights and we walk around in the dark and we look like shapes and shades and shadows. Are they seeing us 110, 150 years ago and saying that the house is haunted, and then 150 years later, because they said the house was haunted, we start investigating? We're actually investigating ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah, dude.
And that's where it gets trippy to me. And then you have theoretical physicists, right? I read this great article the other day about Sean Carroll. I don't know if you're familiar with him. So Sean Carroll, he talks about, he's entirely happy with this, right? So I read this article. It's really amazing. He says that the fact that tiny particles like electrons and photons don't have one set place in the universe is evidence that there are many parallel universes. He's saying we're getting to a point in technology where he can actually prove this, or we can prove this as humans, that it's a real factual possibility that is a fact that there are parallel universes happening. What do you think about when we get into stuff like that?
Well, here's the thing, is as researchers, we always jump to like theoretical physicists and quantum mechanics and all of these like wonky sciences. And I really don't think we need to. I mean, so well known is the fact that we know that there are at least 4 dimensions. So, you know, you can have a one-dimensional thing, you can have 2-dimensional planes, you can have a 3-dimensional, you know, right-hand rule, 3 dimensions, and you add time, that's a 4th. So then I think it's as simple as saying like, well, if there's 4, why aren't there 5? And if there's 5, why aren't there 6? Like if there's 6, why isn't there 10? Why isn't there 100? Why isn't there 1,000,000? Like I don't think you need to get into theoretical physics to say that, listen, we don't have 1 of something. We don't have 2 of something. We don't have 3 of something. We have 4 things that we already know about that are dimensions. Yeah. And so adding a 5th doesn't seem like it's that big of a problem. Well, if you've got 5, why not 10? And I think that people lose track. You know, I've heard skeptics say like, well, if you can catch 1 ghost, you can prove that there's ghosts. Well, we already know that there's 3 dimensions. So we've got 3 of those. So we've already proved there are dimensions. And I don't think that you need to actually go into theoretical physics. A lot of people want to do that, how light bounce works. And I mean, it is interesting and it's super fascinating. But the reality is that what we're doing, and the reason what we're doing is so important, is because if you make a breakthrough in physics, it's cool, and you might help to understand the rotational spin of a quark. And if you break a breakthrough in math, like there's a good like chance that you'll get a Nobel Prize in mathematics or variology, and you might cure a disease. But if you make a breakthrough in researching what we call ghosts, you fundamentally change human reality forever.
Exactly.
Like that's how important what we do is. And so when people laugh and think that what we do is silly, sure, it's silly. We do talk about a lot of crazy stuff. It's what I've been saying. It is really weird what we talk about. But at the heart of it, we are questioning why human beings exist and what happens to us after we die. That's the biggest question that humankind has ever faced. Yeah. Even when we talk about extraterrestrials, like extraterrestrial life pales in comparison to an eternal existence or an afterlife. Because, I mean, it just does. It answers the big question. You would have thought that this would have been job number 1 for humans the first time that there were 3 sentient cavemen who were self-aware. and one of them fell down dead. The other two in that moment should have been like, what the fuck just happened to him? And let's start figuring it out right now. We should devote all of our resources to it because I don't want that to happen to me. And they should have started at that moment trying to figure out what happened to us when we die. But for some reason, human beings, we like simple answers. And so those two cavemen were like, I don't know, let's dig a hole like a seed and bury him in the ground. Maybe he'll grow again. And here we are 500,000 years later, digging holes and putting dead bodies in them.
It's still doing it.
Right. Still doing it. That's it.
I wish that aliens would like sort of present themselves like in a big way and land or do whatever they're gonna do, because that would shift everything. That would shift everyone's belief. Like everything shifts in that moment. Everything you believe has to shift. But I also think that our bodies will go into a shock. I mean, could our bodies handle like fucking other beings, weird looking beings getting off a spaceship and saying, hey, what's up?
Dude, I've said that for years now, though, honestly, like just that. If we had like 100% disclosure, what would happen to us like as a populace, right? Just as a human race. And I honestly think, man, like multiple things would happen, including like organized religion completely failing,
collapsing.
Collapsing. Yes.
Collapsing. Yes.
I do believe that would be a potential.
And that's what's interesting too, because like we take for granted, I mean, we all live in America, and from the looks of us on the screen, we all have some type of European heritage. And so we forget that there are enormous swaths of people who have completely different religious belief systems,
right,
who are fervent believers in their belief systems. And we say that like religions might collapse, but like, I don't think the Hindus would have a problem with space people. They've been talking about space people for thousands of years. There are tribes in Africa that have been talking about space people for tens of thousands of years. And so I think that there's a huge segment of society, it's us that still is in the process of warming up.
Yes.
It's us realizing that if aliens were to disclose themselves, if they were benign, intelligent, if they were helpful, if they're not something that wants to eat us and just blow us up, if they're actually willing to help us, I don't think the problem is religion. The problem is all of a sudden people have to get rid of what they haven't been able to get rid of without aliens, which is hating someone because they have a different color skin, or they love someone that's a different sex than them, or the same sex as them. All of a sudden, all of that has to be wiped away, because if you want to be part of a galactic family, like you can't already get along with your own family.
Exactly.
And so all of those racist, sexist, hateful, all that stuff has to go. And I mean, we can't do it, now with the same people on our planet. We can't get along with people on our own planet that are us, that are literally our family. If you break the math down, a friend of mine did this once. If you break the math down, since we're all European, this is going to be a lot closer. But you have 2 parents, you have 4 grandparents, you have 8 great-grandparents, 16 great-great, 32, 64. When you do that 31 times, when you go back 31 generations, then there are more people in your family than have ever existed on Earth, which means that you have to have a common relative before that 31st generation, which means that everyone on the planet is at least your 30th cousin. So we're already all related, and we can't fucking get along.
Yeah, dude.
We love you, John Tenney.
Who was telling that story before he got on? Who was telling that story?
Chad,
I was just telling that story before in Ohio at the hotel when I come out, and you had all the senior bus tour surrounding you, and the driver's like, come on, we got to go, and they didn't want to go. They wanted
Fuck you.
Tenney, you never stop. It was like 6 a.m. at that point.
Amazing.
Well, that's the problem, though. I think with the society that we're living in today, you're absolutely correct. Humans can't get along with each other. So I think there'd be some sort of power, right? Somebody always needs to be in power. Yeah. They need to be the ones. With the world we live in, they need to have the most money, the most materialistic things, the most in-position power politically in that spot, right? To control. Everything is about control for humans, most of them. And I think that's the problem too, is if another species came down, another alien being with this brain that's just way farther than ours, and they start teaching us. They're they want to be civil with us. They want to teach us. Eventually, one person out of that millionth cousin that we have there, right, is gonna say, F you all, now I have that, and I'm going to take out this alien. Now I'm in power.
Right.
Now this person right here, the millionth cousin, is the alien of the power tripping and trying to conquer everybody else. That's just how shit happens on Earth. Maybe that's why they haven't come down here, because they don't want that to happen.
I mean, there's a multitude of hypothetical reasons, right? Like, first of all, if you think about intelligence in a certain way, so let's say we went to Mars and we found a creature living on Mars that was as smart as a dog or a pig, because pigs are extremely smart. So let's say a pig, dog, or a dolphin, or a chimpanzee. If we found a creature with that level of intellect living on Mars, we would spend decades and billions of dollars learning to talk to it.
Yeah.
But since they already exist on our own planet, fuck it, let's kill them and eat them, right?
Yep.
It's unbelievable to me. If you found a dog knows its name, it knows commands, it can point you in directions of things. It's very fucking intelligent, right? But here it's like, keep it as a pet, it's fine. A pig, right? Bacon is good, chop it up, eat it, it's fine. So that's one reason. Like, if we can't even get along with our own species, if we destroy our own planet and we destroy each other's, why even get involved with us? And then secondly, I tell people in my lectures all the time, if they are hyperspace traveling, intergalactic, non-temporally located extraterrestrials, and they have traversed all of space and time, like, what the fuck do they want to do anything with us anyway for? Like, when was the last time you flew to Japan to explain math to a cat? Right? You wouldn't. You wouldn't, because it doesn't make any sense. It knows that you're not going to understand it. It's not going to understand the math. Why expend all the time, energy, money, resources to do that if it's not even going to understand what you're talking about?
I just picture Johnny and I sitting in a room over there in China, just trying to talk to a cat and just waiting for a response for years. Just our beard's getting old and scrubby, and we're just still trying to talk.
But here's what's crazy, and you guys know this, and everyone knows this. Animals do talk to us. We learn it as children, and we still experience it as adults. How many times, I don't know how many of you have a cat or a dog, Chad, I know you do.
I do.
But how many times do you say a sentence, like ask your animal a question, and then you wait, pause for a response, and then you respond as if you got a response? You'll say, like, how was your day today? And then you wait, and you go, really? That sounds good. And the dog didn't fucking say anything, but somehow you are responding to it. And little kids do this without knowing that they can't do it. They talk to trees, they talk to flowers, they talk to dogs, they talk to cats, because they understand that life, consciousness, the ability to exist, exists inside of those things. As we get older, we learn we're smarter than it. And then we start to cut ourselves off from it. Yeah. But if you ask a little kid, do you think the sun is alive? They don't understand that question. But if you ask them to draw the sun, they'll put a happy face in the middle of it because they know it's alive.
Yeah. That's fucking nuts. I love it.
Goddamn.
I love it.
I love the sun. I love the sun. I love my vitamin D every day when I walk outside.
They do the same. They do the same thing in the center of a daisy. When you ask them to draw a daisy, they know flowers are alive. They know everything is alive. And as they get older, as we get older, we get jaded. We don't take the time to recognize how beautiful and alive everything is. And
there's
and those things might be smarter than us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I don't know any dogs that are really stressed out about their jobs.
Well, they just are. I mean, they don't have minds and egos. They just exist in the moment.
Yeah, they just exist, and they exist mostly to love.
Right.
That's all they exist for.
Like, I was gone for 4 days, and the second I got home, my dog was all up on me and like almost whimpering, couldn't get enough of me. You know what I mean? Like all up on me. It was like 100% just pure love right there. Absolutely.
Well, I did. I will not be able to remember the math, but I broke that once down too, because they say a dog's life is 7 years to every one human being. Right. So like when you're gone for an hour from your dog, that's like a week. That's like a week to a dog.
That's why they're like, where the fuck have you been?
I've only been gone for an hour. I was only gone for an hour. Why is it going so crazy? No, to the dog, you were gone a fucking week. You just walked out the door and were gone for a week.
That's amazing.
That's awesome.
That is amazing.
Dogs are really interesting to me. I totally agree with you. Animals are in general. Just the way that they sense things. When we get into the brain as human beings, we don't know everything about the brain. That's the most mysterious thing. And you're talking about dogs like sensing, having that sense, right? They know when you're coming home before you get home. They just, They feel, they sense. They know when you're sad. They know when you're happy. They just know it before you even say anything or talk or communicate. They're sensing that. I feel like we shut off a lot of those things from childhood on, like you were talking about and describing. As a child, you're so innocent. Your brain is so open to so many possibilities. You have this crazy imagination. You have this crazy sense of opening up to so many different things. And as you're developing, I really believe I'm so fascinated by the conscious thought in the brain and the way it's working with all these mysterious things that we're investigating, right? When we go into these haunted locations or these paranormal experiences, I'm really fascinated with the brain, how we're having these experiences, because truly that's what it's about. It's about the experience and information that we're collecting into this brain that we're living in these bodies until it's our time to die and move on. But where does the conscious thought go? Like, where does the energy?
But that's what I was saying earlier. Like, it's a program being beamed into my brain. Like, my brain is the receiver. Mm-hmm. Like, one of the big problems with consciousness research and brain research is that they can't find stored memory. They don't know where memory is stored. They've cut portions out of the brain to try and find it. They've done all of the CAT scans and CTs that they can do to try and find it. And they can't find where the memory is. Like, it's just impossible. And I think that's because the memory is not stored locally. As human beings have developed technology, we start to mimic things that the nature learned how to do 1 million years ago. So like with an oak tree as an example, an oak tree hides all of its information in every acorn it drops on the ground. That way, the information of that oak tree isn't lost. It spreads out its information. When we first started developing as human beings, when we first started developing ways to retain information, we had these giant floppy disks. We had these giant reel-to-reels. We'd put them in computers. We'd store all the information in them. But then we realized, that shit can crash or break. And so we should store the information non-locally. Now, as our technology has developed, where do we store everything? In the cloud. We've spread it out across multiple systems so that if your computer crashes, like mine was crashing earlier, it doesn't lose the information. Nature figured this out millions of years ago, and we're a part of nature from millions of years ago. I'm not stored just in John. It doesn't want to lose my information. It stores my consciousness non-locally. It stores it somewhere else off-site so that when my body dies, that information doesn't get lost.
Wow.
See, that's amazing. And
love that.
I feel like we're getting closer and closer as we're evolving technology and so on. I don't think anyone's going to have the right answers.
Well, yeah, I mean, like with one of my friends is a neurobiologist. And one of the things we have conversations about is the reason that we'll never figure the brain out is because the only thing that we can really research the brain with is the brain. And so you can't you can't solve something with something you can't solve, right? So human brains are trying to figure out how human brains work. You're in a closed system. You need to be outside of the system to understand it. If you get lost in the woods, you can't ask yourself for directions out of the woods because you're lost. So when a brain is looking at another brain, trying to figure out how brains work, you're in a closed system and you can't figure it out. And I think that that's for a reason. I don't think we're supposed to know. I've said this for decades at my lectures. I think that we're supposed to have these conversations. We're supposed to talk about this stuff. We're supposed to use it to communicate and grow and engage with each other. Because if you did know what was going to happen, then what is the fucking point of all of this? Like, if you knew,
absolutely.
then just I wrote once in a book, once all of the stars have been mapped, once human consciousness has been figured out, once the galaxy has been traversed and everything has been written down so that we'll know it forever, we'll live in a collective yawn for infinity. We'll be fucking bored because there's no mystery left anymore. Like, it's fun to look for the mystery, but then once it's gone, once all mystery is gone, once everything is answered, fucking game over. Just cash us all out.
Yeah.
It's kind of what Johnny said before you came on, Tenney. We were talking about this is going to be us 20 years later where we're just like, oh, you guys again? just on our like Bluetooth holograms, whatever's coming out in 20 years. It's not even gonna be cell phones. It's going to be computer chips in our brains where we're seeing each other holographically in the presence of our own space. That's what's probably going to happen 20 years from now. It's not even going to be this call that we're doing. We're over mics and stuff. It's going to be you're here in my space, boop, and hologram. By the way, which I find fascinating.
So wait a second. So if aliens have technology just like that, they'd seem like ghosts to us.
Yeah.
Right? Like, all of a sudden you just see people and hear them, and sometimes they'd be able to interact, but you don't have the technology. They've developed biomechanical implants, which they're now born to and bred into, and now they can receive holographic messages that move through space and time. And our little, evolved brain is only at a certain point. And so we're like, oh, what's that weird guy walking in the hallway for? Like, that's what I'm talking about. That's a Venusian space wizard from the year 9000, man. Like, he's got technology that looks like magic to you, and our little brains can only process him as a shadow person.
That's nuts.
And I heard someone conversating the other day talking about holograms and stuff. What happens if the UFO experiences that people are actually seeing are actually just holograms being projected, projections, and that's why they're able to move at fast space, whatever. I mean, is that a possibility? I think.
Yeah, of course.
It makes sense in my, little brain over here that where possibly it's just holograms.
Well, sure, but I mean, there's different camps in ufology, right? So the two main camps in UFO research are nuts and bolts and 4D, right? So nuts and bolts are guys who believe that the ships are built by aliens and then they fly here. And then there's people like me who are 4Ders, where we think that they're interdimensional, they're non-temporal, they're non-local, they're a construct of consciousness, they're a construct of archetypes that exist within our consciousness that's much deeper. Because it really doesn't make sense to me that you have somebody who can traverse all of space and time in the cosmic galactic distances, but someone has to bolt the fucking ship together. It's like that really. That's a really terrible actual way to make a craft. We're already trying to figure out how to make crafts that aren't made out of steel and metal. And so it's really weird that they can go from, Alpha Centauri millions of light years away to Earth, but then like it gets shot with a fucking missile or hit by lightning and it crashes. Like, that's a terrible fucking ship. And why does it have so many lights on it? Like, are you going to hit deer when you're moving through space? Like, you have to have headlights on your spaceship as you cross intergalactic darkness. In the 1970s, the FAA wanted to remove landing lights from planes. They didn't need them anymore. They were flying on radar. They were flying on controls. We had the technology in the 70s to have aircraft that weren't covered in lights, but they kept them on because the general public was afraid of flying in planes that didn't have lights on them. And so to this day, we still have planes that have lights on them. We had the technology in the 70s to have crafts without lights on them. Hyperdimensional intergalactic aliens don't need a red light, green light flashing around the ship so that, you can spot it at 6 o'clock in the morning when you're outside drinking a beer. Like, if they want to be invisible, they can be invisible. If they want to project a hologram that you see and they're 4 miles away watching you react to the hologram, that's the type of technology they would have.
Well, do you think it possibly could be like drones from the future, time traveling back, boop, and here they are, and it's us, operating these drones robotically, and that's what we're experiencing too. I guess there's all sorts of possibilities. It's just we start going down that rabbit hole again. But it makes total sense to me when we start diving into it. I don't know. It's very fascinating to me. Tenney, Your
No,
world of knowledge.
I
love you.
I love you too.
I just
Not-
had to say it because
these
I
are the-
haven't said it.
But these are the conversations, right? Like this is nice and stuff, but I still want us all to be sitting around a table so that we can get super animated and pound on the table and spill our coffee, and I can storm out and smoke a cigarette and say something that flips myself out and I have to leave. Like, that's...
Yeah, it's exciting, man. No, I totally agree. That's the excitement. That's part of being human. I miss that too, man. We should get together Friday night. You available?
No, I'm not.
He's like, fuck you.
But really quickly, one thing that I wanted when we were talking about us being able to get along with each other, we have to be honest, and you guys know this. You've heard my lectures, you've talked to me, you know me. Like, we have to be honest about our weirdness, because the fact that we're each unique individuals is the thing that we have in common. And that's hard for some people to wrap their brains around, but our commonality is our difference. Being able to openly talk about who you are and how strange and how weird and how unique you are allows other people. Chad knows. There's a good example with Chad. I was in Los Angeles. We were at the Magic Castle and I was smoking a cigarette, and some random guy like walked over to us and sat down and was smoking a cigarette. And he looked at me and he was like, "So what do you do?" And I was like, "I chased UFOs and monsters and ghosts." And he was like, "What?" And then he like got up and Chad laughed and he was like, "I can't believe you just fucking told that guy like straight to his face, like, hey, I investigate ghosts and monsters and UFOs. It's so crazy." But we have to be able to do that with each other. Yeah. We have to be able to be open, for as crazy as it may sound or it may seem to someone. Like, if this is our one shot to be in this world together, like, give me full weirdness, give me full everybody. Like, I want to know what your strangeness is, because I'm fucking weird and I know I'm not alone.
Absolutely. So, John, what are you doing today, man? What's everything that you have? Anything you're working on? Anything you're doing? What excites you right now, besides the norm of typical things, lectures and whatnot?
In 2018, Michigan had a huge flap of humanoid sightings. So all these really super weird creatures. I don't even call them humanoids. I'm trying to come up with a better word for them. But we had 36 of them all across the state of Michigan in 2018. Wow. Everything from like 6 foot tall robots with heads that look like they're filled with water to little black triangles with legs that ran around a neighborhood. But there were all of these super weird creatures that got spotted in 2018. So I'm compiling all of the information from all the witnesses together and trying to figure out a pattern to it. And if I can't figure out a pattern, I at least want to release the interviews to people, so that if people are seeing these creatures somewhere else. I talked to, I don't know if you know Stan Gordon, he's in Pennsylvania, Bigfoot UFO guy, and a few other researchers. And it seems like creature sightings of these weird creature sorts have been on an uptick since the end of 2017. So that's really kind of what I'm diving into now. And then to break my brain even more on a non-research level to a certain degree is an old UFOer just passed away about 2 months ago. There's a guy from the 50s who, was deep in the heart of ufology from 1950 to 1970. And his son gave me his archives. And the guy was a massive collector of UFO stuff, but he wasn't really a researcher. So none of it is like ordered. And so like I was given boxes, like just boxes upon boxes of newspaper clippings from the 1950s, 60s, and 70s that aren't sorted or organized in any way. And it's busting my brain. I've spent the past like week putting them into file folders by decade, and then pretty soon I'll have to do them by year. And then so they're all deteriorating. So I have to get, de-acidifying spray and put them in sheets of paper and save them, because it's history. Like it can't go away. People say like it's not going to go away, it's all going to be on the internet, but that's not true. Like there is stuff that's going away all the time. People are going away all the time, and people don't often tell their stories. Yeah. And so if it only gets reported in one little newspaper in Tennessee in 1958, and that's the only time they ever talked about it, like someone has to save that. So that it might contain a word or a phrase that is a little bit of a key to all of this strangeness. So anyway, that's breaking my brain right now.
Wow.
Amazing. Well, I can't wait till the research is all collectively gathered so we can hear
It's super
greatness
crazy.
gets.
Like there's a really quickly to give you an idea. So there were these two contactees in the 1950s called the Mitchell sisters. It was these two girls who said that they were contacted by an alien, and they went on a ship and they went to Venus, which was kind of what contactees were doing back in the day. Everybody was going to Venus or Mars. But the Mitchell sisters wrote this book that was like 20 pages long called We Met the Space People. And that's all they ever wrote. That's all we have from the Mitchell sisters. No one really knows what happened to the Mitchell sisters after they wrote their book. And, they didn't make a lot of money. People didn't, it was a self-published back in the 50s book called We Met the Space People. In this guy's archives, he has like 6 transcribed lectures from the Mitchell sisters telling their stories and extended versions of their stories. And he has the names of the cities that they were born in. So I was able to track them down and find out that they both passed away. But we've never seen, no one in ufology until 2 weeks ago had ever seen a picture of the Mitchell sisters.
Oh my God.
And I posted one on Twitter 2 weeks ago. So it's just stuff like that.
Wow.
Amazing.
What scares you? Because to me, like you're we talked about this, you're Superman, out there, like what's really scary for John Tenney, like, because you've come up against so many crazy things, like you and I share a near-death experience and a death experience, like what profoundly scares John Tenney?
It's a good question. I think that so a year and a half ago, I moved my parents in with me, and it's been super difficult. It's a real learning curve, taking care of your parents. They don't want to be taken care of. Parents don't want to become children to their children. But it's been a really kind of transformational experience too, because I've really begun to understand. I think the thing that scares me is I take such good care of them, and they took such good care of me, and I watch people take good care of their children. I watch people take good care of their parents, and I take care of my parents as well as I can. And the thing that scares me is like two aspects that I've really come face to face with. And one is, it scares me that people don't want to take care of each other. Like right now in the world in general, like that frightens me. It frightens me when I see people laughing at someone's pain. When I see someone not caring if someone else is in pain, like that truly fucking scares me. And then on a kind of more personal level, like the thing that really shakes my inner core is my mom has dementia and Alzheimer's. And so watching someone disappear, like their body is still there, but watching the mind go, and knowing that that can happen to any of us, like that all of this crazy shit that's in my head right now that I've just talked about for an hour and 13 minutes, that can go, that can be gone. And that the person that you're talking to right now can still be here, but not here. Like that scares the fuck out of me.
I hear that. I mean, yeah, I think it's all scary. I mean, I don't really understand what this all means, or to even be alive or to be human, but I find it terrifying, like often, and exhilarating and funny and ridiculous. But man, like I hear that. A lot of people, think, and yes, going out and doing all these crazy ghost things, and yeah, that can be scary at times. But I think just, losing your loved ones, or the trauma of losing a loved one, that's what kind of terrifies me in my life. I think you're right.
And I understand too, like, hopefully, like it's a dance, right? So the other thing is too, is like, I know the work I have to do on myself psychologically, but like, I know that there will be sadness, and there has been when friends pass. I lost 3 friends last year. It was a weird year, a lot of young people dying off. But none of them would ever want me to be sad. Like, and I think that's the dance we have to learn, is that you can be sad when people are gone, but then like those people that love us and we love would not want us to be traumatized for the rest of our life. They would not want us to cry and emote and anguish over them. They didn't want that while we were alive. You know, the people who love you don't want you to be sad. They don't want you to be afraid. They don't want you to be scared. And it's not any different once they're gone. They still, and especially they wouldn't want you to be that way over them.
Right.
And like last year, you know, I lost a lot of friends of mine too. Kind of a weird year as well. And every one of those friends have been in my house that I'm sitting in right now. And I love it because I can walk into a room and be like, oh man, me and so had some beers and we laughed all night long right here. But then it's so sad to walk past that spot. Like it's a happy and sad thing. And it's just, I never want to leave from this house because those memories are forever here. But I almost can't stand to be in the house at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think part of the dance that I learned, because I had 3 friends go last year, which were ridiculous because they were all younger than me. And the thing that I had to really reinforce into my head was that the things that I loved about them weren't physical anyway. Like, I loved them because of how they cared. I loved them because caring, laughter, love, those were all infinitely intangible things, and they exist forever because they're not physical. And I realized that when I missed them, I'm being greedy. I want to see them physically. I want to hold them physically. But when I close my eyes and think about them, I still laugh as much as I did thinking about the ridiculous shit that we did. When I think about hugging them, I feel their love still, because those things are infinite. Those things are intangible. Those things never went away because they weren't a body. They were a receiver for something larger and infinite that still exists somewhere else. And, you know, there's it's an old story, but it's like, you know, there's one of my mentors who was a minister. I asked him about death and how he felt about it. He had been diagnosed with lymphatic cancer and he had only been given a few months to live. And this is back in the 90s. And I said, how do you feel about death? As he was a Christian minister. And so I figured he was going to give me some heaven stuff, you know, whatever. And he said, listen, he said, you know what? We're standing on the docks of the ocean and a cruise ship comes. And every now and then the cruise ship will pick up some people from the dock. And then the cruise ship will turn around and sail away. And we wave and we cry and we say goodbye to the cruise ship as it vanishes from view and it disappears over the horizon. But it's not gone. It's just over the horizon. And it'll come back to the dock where you're standing. And one day you'll have a ticket and you'll get on that ship with all of those people that you love. And you'll turn around and you'll wave to people on the dock. And to them, it'll seem as though you disappeared over the horizon, but you're not. You're just over the horizon and you're going to come back for them.
It's a beautiful thing.
Great story.
I mean, yeah, it's love.
Yep.
And I think that's what we're missing sometimes as humans, to stop what we're doing in our crazy worlds, our 9-to-5 jobs, whatever it is on your journey personally. You're going through your own individual life. And when there's your time to go, that's it. It's unstoppable that we're going to leave this body. And I think it's important, very important, to stop and take in the breath of fresh air. Enjoy the moment that you have in this living world that we are in, this reality, if it is a reality indeed, or a matrix, whatever it is. Appreciate it. Appreciate this moment, because I think we're so hard on ourselves. We're so, we can be selfish. We can be all these emotions. But I think we forget that living is such like a joyful thing too. I think the point of living is get to the point when it's your time to go, no matter what that is. Have no regrets. Be happy, content with what you have in the moment when it's your time to release from this body. Be that positive, energetic being whatever is meant to be afterwards, whatever your world wants to be, whatever your beliefs are. Just move on and be that.
Well, and
love
you're
it.
exactly right, Nick. And you know what? This is when people, like when I tell people to be present and to like focus on what they're doing and really enjoy the moment that they're existing in. Like, I mean that because I hear people every day throughout our lives, we hear people say like, oh, I used the microwave, I saved 50 seconds cooking dinner. Oh, I went down the side street, I saved like 10 minutes getting home. Like when you're on your deathbed, God willing, you get to a point where you can actually be in a bed and you're going to die and know it's going to happen. But like at the end of your life, no one gives you back the time you saved. Like no one says, oh, here's that 30 seconds from the microwave. Oh, here's that minute and a half from when you drove home. Like you don't get those moments. You're not saving it. You're just rushing. And when you rush, you miss, right? So just like, it really is a stop and smell the flowers type of thing. Like just be fucking weird. Just do weird shit. Try and make people happy. I'll end this on a high note, and no pun intended. Haha. Here's a high note, no
Where's
pun
the laugh
intended.
track, Josh?
Yeah,
You're
that's
right.
right.
Okay, so living with my father, and my father has a lot of chronic pain. So I made a phone call and I told my friends, I'm going to get my dad high. And my dad has never smoked pot in his life, ever. And so I got some pot. I packed up a big, huge bowl and I sat him in the kitchen.
Nice.
And he didn't want to. He had been a smoker. He hasn't smoked in 20 years. He doesn't want to smoke anything. I said, listen, just take a big rip off of this, inhale it. He did. I put my hand over his mouth. I made him inhale it and hold it.
Yeah.
He coughed. He let it out. He coughed for like 4 minutes, got really pissed off at me. He said, this isn't working. This isn't doing anything. I hate this. I'm never going to do this. And he got up and he stormed and he went to his bed. He went to his bedroom. And so I waited like 30 minutes. And my dad is a very cantankerous man. He's very screamy and yelling. And he was being very quiet. So I walked into his room and he was sitting on the edge of his bed. And I said, so do you feel any better? And he looked at me and he said, you don't understand. That stuff doesn't do anything to me. I used to be an alcoholic. I used to do all types of stuff. All I did was smoke that pot. And now for 30 minutes, I've been sitting here on my bed thinking about how I'm not in my body and I'm floating through space and I'm over on Neptune and I just passed and I was like, oh, this motherfucker is high.
That's great.
Oh my god.
That's awesome. Love it,
Makes
man.
my heart happy. I love that.
Anything
love that.
Anything to take away from the reality of pain or anything you're going in right now. That's great. That's a great story, man. We love you so much, John. You have no idea, man. I really appreciate everything you've done for us. Everything, all journeys, everything we've investigated, learned from you, all of that. Thank you, man. Really
thank
do.
you guys
Yeah,
for
buddy.
everything you do, man.
I love you, man.
You guys know that I am slightly reserved, but no, thank you guys for everything you do.
Well, no, and like just I don't know. It always makes me feel like everything's gonna be okay when you talk to John Tenney. You know what I'm saying? Like it just makes that life just seem like, oh, yeah.
That's because you guys never see me like laying on the floor of my living room crying and screaming into the void.
How true it is. Yes. We're all, yeah. Because I scream into that same void. I understand. Real quick, John Tenney, where can people find you? Like, where can people like go and find your lectures and stuff?
Weirdlectures.com, or they can just search John Tenney Weirdo on Google, and that'll lead them to my Twitter, which is John E.L. Tenney, my Instagram, which is John E.L. Tenney, my Facebook, which is John E.L. Tenney. Everything is just John E.L. Tenney. John L, like Ka-El, like Superman. John L.
I love it.
Thank you, man. Hey,
Thank you.
always great to talk to you, man. And I learned something new tonight that I'm going to take away from. So really appreciate it, man. And I can't wait to see you again. We'll cross
I
paths
think I'm
very
seeing
soon.
a lot of you pretty soon. Right?
I think so. Hopefully, yes.
Yeah.
I know I will in October.
Yeah. Hauser, get on that.
Get on that, Hauser.
Absolutely. If you guys are going to be there, I will be there for sure.
All right.
One day we're just gonna knock on your door.
Yeah.
We're just gonna take you, John.
We've
We're gonna
talked
take
about
you somewhere
this.
special.
It's gonna happen one day.
Throw that bag over the head.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
But it's
You heard it
actually
here
happening.
first.
You heard
Box
it.
full of bars of soap.
You never know when it's coming. It's coming.
Awesome.
All right.
All right,
guys.
John. Have a great night, man. Look forward to seeing you soon, and much love, buddy.
Love you,
Okay.
buddy. Thank you.
Love
Thank you so much. All right, John. Take care.
Take it easy.
Just all sorts of weird stuff. I mean, that's the cool thing about John is he can take us one place, but he always breaks it down. Like I was saying, he breaks it down where I'm like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Gotcha. You know, it's really cool. It's always interesting talking to him because I'm learning something new. And that's what I love. He's absolutely right, though, about human beings having to communicate much more. We can learn more a lot faster rather than fighting against each other or being like, I'm better than you, you're better than me, or whatever the case is, or I have all the answers, you don't.
Yeah.
But it's all about learning, right? Evolving, learning, being human, laughing, having fun. This is what it's all about.
Absolutely.
Couple of people just getting together and having a great time and remembering that we are human. Nobody's against anyone, no one's above anyone. We're all equal in this plane. We all walk the walk and talk the talk. Some of us do.
And it's weird as fuck.
It is weird as
Yes.
fuck. Exactly.
I sat here quiet, dead silent for almost an hour and a half.
I know.
And I was just so entranced with what he was saying. Like,
That was me
I
too,
forgot
bro.
I'm like supposed to ask questions.
Yeah, I was like, oh, fuck.
Wake up.
This was an amazing show. It
was so good. Yeah.
I can only imagine people are going to get off right now and go to sleep, and you're going to hear as you're consciously going into your REM sleep, it's going to be John Tenney in your minds now.
Talking to you like this, everybody talking to you like right now.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll tell you what, though, like
if we were in a
anybody,
UFO right now.
but anybody out there who hasn't, familiarized themselves with John Tenney and the things that he has to say, his ideas, all that, holy shit! Like, do yourself a favor and go everywhere and check out his stuff because it is mind blowing. It really is mind blowing, and that was just the tip of the iceberg this evening.
Go to his lectures. His lectures are
Yes.
absolutely amazing. If you haven't seen Ghost Stalkers, search
do
it.
that.
Search it online. Ghost Stalkers is online right now. I think it's under Amazon, probably on Prime or Hulu or whatever your streaming platform is. It's out there. YouTube it. I don't really care. It's up there. Just watch it.
It is.
It's out there. Do it.
It's all out.
Find it.
It's out there somewhere, right? Sorry, it's out there somewhere.
And that's it, everybody. So have a great night. Stay tuned because we got some more amazing guests coming on. Much love. Remember, stop what you're doing during the day, take in the fresh air, love one another, and we will all meet our maker soon. So enjoy the moment. Good night, everyone. G Crew out.
Peace out, G Crew.